Yeah, clapperboard. Hello, welcome to the Comic Coach podcast with me and Stroud. Hello, lovely people. Hope you are well. And of course, I hope you've had a cracking week and I hope you found some time to play a little bit, to laugh some more, and of course, be kind to yourself. And yes, lovely listeners and viewers of the Comic Coach podcast, you know, I always get to meet and chat to awesome human beings. Well, this man to the side here, as you look at us, is no exception and is waving. So if you're listening, just trust me, Christopher's waving. So welcome to the podcast, Christoph Williams.
Thank you very much. Very grateful for the opportunity to join you today.
Oh, it's lovely. It's lovely to have you. And so my listeners and my viewers always like to know, because they're a curious bunch, where in the world are you today?
I'm in a place called Billingshurst in West Sussex.
Lovely. So for those of you that listen in America and other countries that aren't the UK, West Sussex is sort of like it's sort of down to the southeast of the UK. You know, I did just start doing never eat shredded wheat because that's how I remember.
I do the same. So it's halfway between London and the coast. That's basically roughly.
Awesome. And how goes your world? How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. I've been enjoying the wonderful weather with my fiance. Been going out and about, having a few walks, seeing a few wildflowers, getting out in the countryside. It's been wonderful, thank you.
Amazing. And congratulations with fiance.
Thank you. Work in progress. We're setting a date for next year.
Oh, very exciting, because regular listeners will know that I got married last year. And if you're anything like any of my friends, they were so excited because they're like, we haven't had a wedding for years. You know, because in your 20s and your early 30s, you go to loads and loads of weddings. And then gradually as you get older, that sort of stops.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, it's very exciting. So I have to ask, did you ask?
Oh, of course, yes. More than one time.
He is nothing but persistent. I love it. Right now, Christoph, now everybody knows that I always like to ask my brilliant guests 6 questions all around impact, who's impacted them, what's had impact on your life and you and everything else like that. Are you ready for the 6 questions?
I can't wait.
I know, he's so good. It's like it's a professional. It's like you know what you're doing. So question number 1. Don't know why I felt the need to add the music, but I quite like it. Who has had the greatest impact on your life?
I think personally the biggest impact on my life is my best friend Artie. So I met Artie when I was roughly, I think, 14 years old. It's probably fair to say that I was going off the rails a little bit, probably a little bit mischievous. And I met this young man and he said, oh, why don't you come fishing with me? So I thought, well, okay, why not? Not really my thing, but anyway, I'll go along anyway. And so we were busy fishing, and being the sort of person that I was, I created a nickname for him, which he didn't approve of. It is basically the 6th letter of the alphabet in front of his nickname, Artie. So he warned me that if I called him that again, there'd be consequences. So of course I went up and called him. And the next thing I knew, I was rolling along on the bankside towards a doggy doo-doo. He rolled me over into this doggy doo-doo to express his dissatisfaction with my behavior. And it kind of like taught me a lesson that there are consequences of your actions and what you do. And we became friends. And he was very different from me. He went off offshore and as a sort of industrial cleaner and worked his way up and then became the head of the platform, whereas I went off into university and, a career in corporate. And we've always compared our stories of leadership, which you can imagine leading a group of people out on an oil rig in the North Sea is somewhat different from a corporate organization. But what I learned from him was, he had a bit of a reputation for getting in trouble at times, but it was always based upon his value set. So he's a very value-driven individual. And if someone was to, if he observed someone being cruel or unkind to someone else, he was the sort of person who'd step in and do something about it. So, he taught me that in life you need to have a good set of values and live by them. And he's always been available to chat through things with me whenever I've wanted to. And he's just a really good buddy.
I love that. And Artie sounds awesome. And I think it's so interesting as well, isn't it? That when you've got friends that have come from your teenage part of your life, how different our pathways can be. But actually, they're quite often the people that we feel safest with because they saw us before we had big job titles, businesses, and there is a status in the world. They knew Christoph, they knew Em. And actually that sort of grounding friendship, I think, is one of the most useful ones if you're lucky enough to have it, you know?
Yeah, I agree. I think that it's those formative years, isn't it? And I know we were 14 or whatever when we got together, but it's kind of like you are who you are, and we might not see each other for years or whatever, even, but not really that long. But when you reconnect, you just reconnect. I've got a multitude of friends like that, and it's great. It's really good when you just get together, and it's as if nothing's changed. Basically, you're all just a bit more wrinkly.
Yeah, I mean, a little bit more wrinkly, but just with apparently a little bit more wisdom, which sometimes comes, I'm just thinking about myself with my uni friends. It's like, yeah, sometimes and you're right, you just go back to that beautiful moment where there's just that ease and that comfort, and you just get to be all of you because they love you for who you are. So big up for Artie. We like him a lot.
Yep. And I must add, of course, to my fiance Lisa, because she knows me like no other, and is very grounding. I can be a bit cerebral and theoretical at times, and it's very good to have someone who brings you back down to the planet and says, "Wake up! It's not really like that. Be more practical."
And we definitely, and again, it's that thing because I'm the same with my missus, so she's an artist, and obviously I'm the comic coach, and sometimes we can meet in the middle because we're both creative, but because she's got the academic grounding as well, and she's an academic, whereas I'm the entrepreneur, sometimes it looks like we're very different, but we pull each other back into that middle. So yay for Lisa, yay for Artie, because they've helped Christoph be the awesome human that you are today. Question number 2: what keeps you motivated in what you do?
I think there's two things. One is what I call the jaw-dropping wow moment. So if I'm working with a group of people or individual or whatever, when you see their face have that dawning moment, when the self-realization and self-awareness moment happens, and I love doing that or helping people through that process when it's not me telling them something, it's me creating an experience which leads them to come to that conclusion themselves. When you see that, the jaw-dropping moment, that to me is a real motivator and a wow. And I think in a broader sense, and this might sound a bit weird, but it's kind of conflict situations and all the terrible stuff that still goes on in the world. And I feel that means there's an opportunity to support to try and resolve some of those issues. So on an individual level, I love the wow dawning moment, and you see that person shift in their mindset. And the broader, bigger scheme of things, all the terrible stuff that's going on, all the rest of it makes me realize, human beings are human beings, and there are opportunities to help us to be better in what we do.
It's really interesting because the way that you just framed that, and so Christoph and I met at a conference, and you one of the speakers, and as was I, and everything, and then we chatted over lunch and could have carried on talking and not gone back to the rest of the conference. And you're so right, because I've never really framed it in the way that you just did, but in terms of how that motivation piece, that singular individual moment when you've helped provide the space so that somebody goes, oh. But you're so right. I am so motivated in terms of a bigger, you word there, bigger global piece in terms of why are we not playing more? Why do we not encourage that? Not only for kids, and there's lots of really important stuff. And as we're recording this in May, we're coming up to the UN Day of Play, which is on the 11th of June. That's important. But also as adults. And it's like we need to have these moments of joy. We need to have moments of laughter and that's a bigger thing than just one individual piece. So yeah, there's definite parallels. We might do it in slightly different ways, but definite parallels in what we both do. So on that, it's like I thought about this, Christoph. How do you play?
Oh gosh, how do I play? I destroy the guitar on a periodic basis.
Excellent. I love that. No actual play, just destroying.
Yeah, I'm absolutely rubbish, but I absolutely love it. I enjoy going to concerts. I love good pogo, actually. As it happens, I'm probably getting a little bit old, but I went to a punk gig not so long ago, and I looked around, and there's all these sort of like middle-aged men tapping their feet, and I thought this isn't good enough. So I basically I threw my my half pint plastic glass, admittedly, of beer all over everyone, and just went to what I call apeshit mental. And basically everyone else then went apeshit mental, and the whole place erupted, and we all had a really good time.
Amazing. And as somebody who's a performer, I cannot begin to tell you that those musicians will have been so grateful for you, because it's that thing you need the instigator, you need the person to start. It's like, like when you're doing a show, you need someone that laughs out loud, because otherwise you sit, especially us Brits, and everyone just sits and smiles and goes, yeah, that's funny.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And when I reflect, it's one of my proud moments, one of my proud achievements. Is if I can kick off, a good, pogo session with a bunch of strangers, and everyone has a wonderful time. And yeah, it's interesting you say, isn't it? Because it kind of like it almost needs someone not brave enough, but stupid enough in a way to do that first move, and then everyone just goes because it's an accepted.
Yeah, and it's that thing, isn't it? And I'm sure you've had this in lots of spaces that you've created, because I know one of the things that people reflect to me is that I'm quite often the permission giver and the permission person to play, or the permission person to laugh.
Yeah.
And it's that thing of, and I know, obviously you've studied the brain and how we all think and all of these things. And sometimes we do need that permission giver. And I think there is a bravery element, but it's also, I don't know whether it's bravery or a little bit of stupidity sometimes as well.
You got to be a bit of a risk taker, I suppose. And I think, when I reflect upon myself, my life, I suppose there are times when I've chosen to do something which might not be the best for myself, but for everyone around me, it creates a better outcome. So, yeah, and maybe I just like doing that. I don't know, but it's definitely something that I do in different ways, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. What's one action that you've taken in the last year that's really impacted your life?
I'm not sure it was in the last year, but I'd like to share the experience I had a long time ago, actually, with my ex-wife, actually, which was she rang me up, and she was pregnant at the time, and she said, "Look, Christoph, I want to try something called hypnobirthing." And I thought, wow, okay, that's a bit different, but let's explore and investigate it. And I've been interested in hypnosis from as an undergraduate. I remember going to the university and trying to read about it. There was one book in the whole library, it was some time ago, but there wasn't much on it. So we went along, we got trained up, and I did the hypnobirthing piece, and we ended up having 2 children delivered at home, one of whom I delivered myself. So it was quite an experience, let's say. But what it did is it opened up a world of possibility to me, which I hadn't seen before. And then more recently, in the last year or so, I've been applying what I learned in that to context in work. So supporting people on leadership development programs to use, I'd like to call it state management rather than hypnosis, but you could call it a mix of meditation, hypnosis, mindfulness. The label matters less to me than the impact that it has. So I've started applying that in a corporate setting, leadership development context. And that to me was, a really important decision. And again, maybe a little bit risky. And it's interesting because to sell it into the corporates, I did it around the resilience piece, helping people become more aware of their physiology and their cognitive resources. And we were using EEG and ECG, so technical equipment to measure people's brains and their hearts and stuff, and then giving them an indication visually or auditory as to what their state was, with a view to helping them to learn not just how to be more aware of their physiological and cognitive resources, but also to be able to control them better in pressurized situations. So that's how I sort of positioned it. But the real reason was during this training program, I was trying to shift people's mindsets, change their values, attitudes, beliefs, maybe arguably even their personality. So when I first designed this particular part of this program, people criticized me and said, "Look, Christoph, you shouldn't be doing this. We're not here to change people's personalities." And I thought, well, actually, I've got a very different view on this, because if we want people to demonstrate different leadership behaviors longer term, we need to change their internally. I call it their leadership mindset. So I created this whole experience, which if you're interested, I can tell you more about. But the key part of it, one part of it, was a significant proportion of the experiences around the state management piece. Now, why do I do that? It's because we know that there are physical changes in the brain which take place when people are in this sort of state. So it doesn't take a rocket scientist to work out, actually, you know what, if you want to change people's mindset or personality, whatever you want to call it, if we can coincide that experience with this state management, then you've got a great chance of significantly changing those people. So I think that was, the instigation of that approach, which we've now done multiple times, and it seems to be very effective.
I mean, who knew? You change the state of people and they get perhaps out of their head for a little bit and into their body. They might do things in a different way.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I love that on so many levels. So firstly, now I'm lucky enough I've got one son, and I use hypnobirthing as one of the ways. I must admit, his dad was fairly skeptical, shall we say, about it? Fairly skeptical, but by the end, complete convert. Because also, I think the beautiful thing about hypnobirthing is that I think it makes the men, I think it gives you a very active role, which I think really help. And there's chemicals, you're releasing chemicals as well. It's your child as well. So there's that side of it. So yeah. And congratulations for helping birth one of your kids. Very good. And then the second bit is, like you, I'm fascinated by hypnosis. So I trained to be a hypnotherapist years and years and years ago. And I never had any desire to practice. That was never, I never wanted to help people quit smoking or anything else like that. But the state piece I found really interesting, especially mixing it with the state piece from a theatre perspective. We understand that there are different states, both physical and emotional states. So when you're learning about this, when you're learning the craft of acting, one of the things, and clowning as well, one of the things that you have to play with is what is going on with your body. And we'll spend weeks and weeks in a rehearsal room trying and moving at different, and in essence, what we're doing is shifting into different states. Correct. Because when you're playing somebody else or you're doing a show, you can't just have it all at one level because people get bored. That's why there's so many boring presentations, because people do it at one level. And let's face it, it won't work. There's lots of very boring presentations, and sometimes the content's great, but they haven't consciously thought about their state changes. And so hearing how that unsurprisingly did impact people, it's that thing of how do you then encourage more people to be brave enough to get out of this thing and come more back into their body? Because when they do, magic happens. And I mean, only a couple of weeks ago I did a workshop for a room of CEOs, and I asked all of them, between 1 and 10, how aware are you of your breath in a work situation? Let's say I think it was about 15 of them in this workshop. 1 was a number higher than 2. And for me, when you're thinking about, and this whole podcast is how do we have impact? If you are not conscious of what this thing, commonly known as your body, is doing, it doesn't matter how brilliant you are there, you're missing opportunities and stuff. How do you consciously play with your state? What do you do for you?
Yeah, and I want actually before that, I'll let me touch on another thing, because there's some evidence around neurosynchronization, so synchronization between people in different situations, and there's research out there suggesting, we call it hyperscanning. So you look at a range of people's physiology and cognition at the same time to see whether they're synchronized, and there's some evidence to suggest actually effective leaders, one, are both task orientated, but also very conscious of the synchronization between them and other people, and how they communicate is important as well. But my guess is, when you're on stage and you're performing, you need to synchronize, if you like, with the audience, and almost get everyone or a degree of consensus in how that group of people is synchronized, because you're like an orchestra in a way. You're what's the word? You know what I mean? You're usually there at the front, and you're there at the front, sort of synchronizing, getting these people all aligned. And I was chatting to another lady she was doing a PhD at Cambridge, and she was basically looking. She was what she was doing. She had danced on the stage, and then she was measuring the cognitive responses of the audience, and then adapting the music on the stage and the dancing to influence the synchronization of the audience, which I thought was really superbly clever as an approach. Yeah. So my guess is that when you're on stage doing your stuff, you are synchronizing, orchestrating these people, your audience, and an element of alignment when you get them all together, and that crescendo of humor and that experience when everyone comes together and has that shared moment is amazing. So anyway, back to your question. Sorry, what was it? How do I talk?
No, I love that, and I have never thought about it because it's so interesting because I've never some of the stuff, like my missus, she's an academic. And one of the things when I did my second TED talk was, should I bring in some stats, to kind of add to, the sense of kind of gravitas about what I was saying. And she said, no, because the way that you are a practitioner that has as much experience, you have 20 years worth of experience. So you're doing a lot of things by instinct and practice versus being a researcher. And, they both have their place and stuff. And it's true because that holding of an audience, quite often people go, how do you do it? And a lot of it is, it's now in my muscle memory, as opposed to me consciously going, I want to create conscious states of change. But of course, I want people to leave feeling different to how they walked in. Whether that's a talk in business or a talk in, or me doing a show. So I'm curious for you, pull it back because I'm good. Yeah, kids, this is why me and Christoph could have talked for the whole rest of the conference because we could go off on tangents together because we're quite geeky about these things. So for you, because obviously you're in a place of transition and you've just left a big role, you're going to probably get another big role and everything else like that. How aware are you of your states and how do you consciously play with them, in your day-to-day life? What are you doing?
I think I give myself sort of micro moments when I reconnect with myself, my physiology and my cognition and my breathing, and I do breathing. I kind of practice what I preach. So on these programs, when I'm helping these people become more aware, I usually start with, I don't know, a session lasting an hour, and then we slowly reduce it down to literally to 10 seconds, maybe 5 seconds. So my belief is this is something you do quite quickly once you get familiar with the approach and well practiced. So I call it kind of like micro state management. So I literally can do it in a couple of seconds. And the whole idea in the training programs we do is that people learn how to do that without anyone else being aware of what they're doing. So it's connecting very, very quickly, very rapidly to where you are physically and mentally, tuning into that and acting upon it to maximize your state of flow, challenge, whatever you want to call it, relaxation. So I find myself doing it all the time in minuscule moments, whether in the lift or whatever. But also sometimes I think if I'm noticing that something's triggering me, and I begin to feel the emotions kicking in, or the physiological response, that's when then I'll proactively and perhaps more consciously bring myself to a state of calmness, I suppose. So yeah, I regularly.
Yeah, I love that, and it is, when I talk to people about breathing, I'm always like, it is a practice, and to start off with, it has to be a conscious choice to breathe in a different way. But as you get more and more skilled at it, or more in practice of it, I guess, and you felt more of the benefits of it, you can do it like that. But you have to put the work in at the start, which links beautifully to our next question. It's like I said, I thought about it. Oh no, how do you take care of yourself? Because you're obviously awesome at holding other people, creating that safe space and everything. And I'm always really curious about people that have lots of impact on other people. How do you look after you?
Well, I do a bit of swimming. I like to walk. As I said, we live in the countryside, so 5 minutes away from here, there's lovely fields and cows and the stuff like that, or a forest. So actually, there's nothing better than going for a walk and being close to water. I find very relaxing as well. So, regularly get out and do a bit of exercise. Probably not enough, as perhaps I should do. I do like going to gigs and comedy and other stuff like that, but again, probably don't do as much as I should do. I think the biggest temptation is to sit and watch the box, because you've got all these platforms and all the rest of it, and you can sit there for hours. And I think I do that, and I like to do that with my fiance. We sit there and we enjoy a good box set like everyone else. But at the same time, I like to get up every now and again and start playing with my toys in the shed or wherever.
Nice.
I literally got a bit of EEG equipment lying around and soldered together or whatever. So, I find that actually quite relaxing as well. And I like hanging out with people. go for a couple of pints, and sit in the sunshine in pub garden, wonderful. Absolutely lovely.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it is that thing. And I love for all my American listeners, it's just like, we have just painted the quintessential British thing there. There is Christoph sitting at the pub, having a couple of beers, and then tootling back to his shed and tinkering on some toys.
Yeah, good summary.
Happy days, happy days. And then what have you been thinking about in the last couple of days? What's really been percolating?
Oh, I'm always thinking. I've got some very, I don't know. Let me give you a couple of examples, and they're very varied. I'm going to start with perhaps the silliest one, which is customer service. Whether AI is really going to deliver this wonderful customer service that everyone said it is, and so I'm questioning a lot about AI. I'm sure it's going to have a big impact and all the rest of it. But I was thinking about the customer service levels that we get and we put up with as consumers these days, and I thought, wait, could we change the system so that, for example, I'm not saying the established do it, but Inland Revenue knows how much money I earn per year. So when I'm on the phone to one of these providers, could they have to pay me for every moment I spend on the telephone in order to motivate them to provide a good level of customer service which resolves my problem more quickly? So again, I'm not saying that's how you do it, but I'm just saying, how can they tilt this model that we're operating in so that it gives a greater incentive and motivation for the companies to really genuinely provide outstanding customer service?
I love that. And I'm taking a beat before I go on a rant about how bad customer service is in the UK, which I'm not going to do because that's not the purpose of the podcast. But let's just say, kids, companies can do better. So, yeah, no, I think it's, and again, this is the thing, right? There's always these different things that are percolating that we're working out and just starting to question, especially when we've got things like that. Now, Christoph, as everybody could tell that I could talk to you for probably 4 days and still we would only scratch the surface, but I'm aware of your time, of course, my good listeners' time. How do people find your work and follow your thinkings, your musings, and your all-round brilliance? Where do they find you, lovely soul?
Well, so I'm on LinkedIn like most others. I do a few LinkedIn posts here and there, like going to conferences. I love going to conferences, in fact, and I like to share my thinking with other people, and I find that inspiring to get people's perspectives or stuff. So I've got a real genuine interest in differences of opinion. I think it's great for people to have differences of opinion, and I think that's the way that we extend our body of knowledge, by understanding each other's perspectives to find new solutions to old problems. So, I'm a great believer in constructive, collaborative discourse where people have different opinions, and we can, delve deeper into situations to get to genuine progress. And that, from my experience, much of conflict between individuals and groups of people is around miscommunications, and seeing people as being from a different group to oneself. And actually, I think if we could just step back a bit and say, you know what, at the end of the day, we're all human beings, and we might have slightly different beliefs and all the rest of it, which is another discussion around inclusion and diversity and stuff. But the commonalities that we have are greater than the differences. And I think if we can focus on those more in a constructive manner, the world will be a better place.
I so heartily agree. Christoph, thank you so much for coming on the Comic Coach podcast with me, Em Stroud. I knew it was going to be a joy. It really has been. So thank you so much. I'll make sure that all of your contact details are on the show notes. So thank you for coming.
Bless you. Thank you much. It's been a pleasure. And there's so much more we can talk about.
I honestly could talk to that man for days. We didn't even, there are so many things that we didn't just tap to. And as I was just saying goodbye to him, then he and I were just talking about, there's a whole thing about what's going on in terms of emotional states and how do we measure that. And the man's mind is fascinating. And I hope that just gave you a little portal, little door into his beautiful world. And he has just left a very big job at Sony. He was the head of, I think he was the head of learning and development. Probably got the title wrong, but his ability of creating programs and his ability of challenging how people think and doing it from the science perspective is just fascinating to me. So it will not be the first and only time that he and I collaborate and work together because, yeah, I just think the man is just a fascinating human being. And I think, what really landed was that last little piece where he talks so eloquently, of how we are so in a place, and this is my reframing of it, so in a place where people are so polarized. Oh, you're in, I don't know, which camp about this camp, because that's different to me and this is different to me. And there's so much anger right now. Everywhere. I see it all around. Everywhere there's anger. There's anger of so many different rights being taken, not being taken, different viewpoints, all of this stuff. You don't need to tell you what's going on in the world. But he's so right. There's so much that we do share. And if we're just a little bit braver and start listening to each other, as opposed to thinking we know, but actually listening to each other, to actually pay attention to where someone has come from, to pay attention to their journeys. And I think quite often, as he said, so many of the conflicts that we see is because people stop listening to each other at some point, right? And of course, there are bigger picture things that we may not be able to influence directly. However, within our own spheres, I wonder how we can really just start to listen to each other from a different perspective. How do we really come together in different ways? And I think part of that has to be, how do we listen to ourselves with kindness? You know, I meet so many people who are so unkind to themselves on a daily basis. And it's really hard to be kind to other people if you're not being kind to yourself. So yeah, a little bit of humanness. And it's one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about discovering, you know, and sharing ways to help people laugh and help people play and help people think with kindness, because that then has deep impact. That's how we can change the world. There you go. Thank you once again for listening to the Comic Coach podcast with me, Em Stroud. It has been a joy. Do please subscribe if you're watching this on YouTube. Do subscribe. I seem to be growing my YouTube channel now, which is fabulous. And thank you and welcome to watching. Let me know if you've got other people that you would like me to interview on the Comic Coach podcast. It's all about impact. And, you know, I have different kind of conversations with different cool people. So do get in touch if you're like, oh, pick me, because I'm always open to chatting to different and new people. Do subscribe, do like all of that good stuff, and have a really good week. Look after yourself, create awesome impact, and make sure you laugh a bit, think a bit with kindness, play. Take care.